That was a doozy last night. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining us on KCMO 95.7 FM. And as always, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Did last night move the needle in a major way, either way, in the 2024 election? The answer to that question is no. Did Kamala Harris technically win that debate last night? The answer to that question is yes. The bar was very low for Kamala Harris. No one really knew anything about her. No one knows what her principles really are. Nobody knows what Kamala Harris is going to do all that differently the next 4 years if she's elected versus what she's done the last 3.5 if being Joe Biden's vice president. But for someone who had no expectations, she got up there, was highly rehearsed, and sounded halfway decent. And as oftentimes happens, Donald Trump did take the bait one too many times. Now, we've come to expect that. It's par for the course, right? Donald Trump cannot help himself. She was effectively able to get under his skin, and there were missed opportunities all over the place. That being said, am I sitting here this morning saying to myself, oh, Trump blew it. Oh, my goodness, the election has turned in favor of Kamala Harris. No, because it hasn't. And you know how I know it hasn't? She is already looking for a second debate. That tells me that her internal polling suggests that she needs these debates right now more than he does. And by the way, it certainly helps when the moderators are in your back pocket. And not only are they in your back pocket in Kamala Harris's case, they're giving you full-blown colonoscopies, is what they were doing last night. My goodness, I haven't seen something that biased from moderators since Candy Crowley back in 2012 with Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. That was an embarrassment to journalism. But I'm not going to spend the next 4 hours complaining about the refs. We knew what the refs were going to do. And from Donald Trump's perspective, and, you know, this is where he's the guy, obviously, that if you don't know, in case you've been living under a rock, I am about to go vote for a third straight election cycle. So that's the guy that whether I like it or not, whether I love it or not, doesn't really matter. Elections are binary choices, okay? You've got two people. You got to pick the best of the two. And for millions of Americans, myself included, we've come to the conclusion that whether it's Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris, Trump may not be the greatest option known to mankind, but he's a heck of a lot better than the other option. And that's the case again this time around. So as is often the case, I look at it and I say, well, where were the missed opportunities? Where were the opportunities for Donald Trump to look at the American people and say, she's selling you a bunch of lies? She has been in office as the vice president with Joe Biden for 3.5 years. And you need to ask yourself if you are better off today than you were when I was in office. And the polling would suggest many of you do not believe that to be the case. You thought that times were a lot better when I was there. And I want to bring that back to you. I want to bring that back to your family. And that's the only point that Donald Trump should have came back to time and time again. Instead, he spent time getting caught up in the weeds on his rallies, on January 6th, on other complaints. And that's not what the American people in large part wanted to hear. And there were opportunities for him to do that. We knew ABC moderators were going to be terrible. Now, they were terrible and more terrible than I thought, but we knew they were going to be terrible. But the best part for Donald Trump last night actually came at the very end. The best part for Donald Trump came in his closing statement. And I'm watching the closing statement, and I'm saying to myself, where was this all night? Can I get a little more of this?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs, and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in.
That was the point in the last 2 minutes of this debate last night, where I said to myself, that's the only point the American people needed to hear for an hour and 38 minutes. That was it. And it was made, but it was made, for the most part, much later than it should have been made. And just hammering that point home time and time again. Now, we knew the media was going to come out afterwards and say, oh, my gosh, Kamala did amazing. Oh, what a candidate. What a performance. That was probably going to be the case no matter what, unless she magically turned into Joe Biden. Right? So it's not their reaction that's predictable. It's the fact that she was mildly coherent. She did have an approach with her words that sounded good. But what hurt Kamala Harris is exactly what I thought was going to hurt Kamala Harris. Because it's not just about what you say and the niceties and the platitudes and all those things that, largely defined her night, little substance. It was also how you look. The optics are oftentimes everything in these debates. And I told you, she's got to figure out a way to help herself with men. And I didn't think she did that at all last night. I have a picture up on my Twitter page at Pete Mundo, X at Pete Mundo, same thing on the Facebook page. And it's a picture of her with her hand on her chin as Trump's talking. And I thought that was the most obnoxious look of the entire night. Presumptuous, arrogant. And what did I say yesterday? I said, guys don't like that. It was the look of the disappointed ex-wife when you go to pick up the kids. That's what it looked like. And those things matter just as much as what is said. No one's going to remember what's said. People are going to remember how they feel watching these things. And how you look if you're watching on television matters. And whoever coached Kamala Harris on the hand on chin, looking down at Donald Trump, made a huge mistake. That was a childless cat lady who was watching way too much MSNBC, who taught her up on that and coached her up on that and thought that was a good idea. So if you're asking me, all right, who won last night? Who might have helped them a little bit last night? It would be Kamala Harris. But it's not nearly as much as some people are making it out to be. And yes, Trump had missed opportunities. Every time I sit down for one of these things for 3 straight election cycles, I think that Trump's going to come in with just something that is not as hyperbolic as it ends up being. And I'm always disappointed. I always am. There's that part of me that just thinks, this time it's going to be a little bit different. And it never is. Never is. And I've just got to accept that. And I think for many of us, we've just got to accept that. But the frustrating part of last night is that we're still going to be now in a coin flip election. When had he done a little bit better job, he could have put himself up in a commanding position coming out of that debate. So now it's a race to the finish. 55 days to go. 913-408-7957. 913-408-7957. I want to get your reaction, though, as well. I mean, these things are always entertaining, and we've got a lot of sound bites, a lot of clips we're going to be getting to throughout the morning here on KCMO. But also you watched it. You listened to it here on 95.7 FM KCMO. And what was your reaction to it? I was at a watch party last night. I'll be sharing some of what was said there with you throughout the morning as well. And don't forget, we do have Tucker Carlson at T-Mobile Center tickets coming up in an hour and a half at 7:45 on KCMO. And at 8:30, Bill O'Reilly is going to be here for a busy reaction Wednesday morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio. Optics matter. I'm sorry that's triggering some of you on the text line at 620, but optics and how you look in these debates and how you come across, that matters just as much as the debate performance itself and what you actually say. So on the text line, Pete, you sound like a misogynist. You're criticizing how a woman looks. How's that go over with Mrs. Mundo? Well, it's funny you ask, Mr. Texter or Miss Texter. It's funny you ask. Because I was out last night. We didn't watch the debate. I was with my friends over at KFL, Kansans for Life. They had a watch party they asked me to help moderate and be a part of. So Kate and I were not together last night. But when I got home, I didn't know, she knew about it, obviously. I don't know if she was going to watch it, if she was going to bother. And she did. And there's two takeaways that she had when I got home. And it was the moderators being awful. And this is coming from somebody who's not like overtly political. I mean, she is, obviously. She has opinions and thoughts, but not like as in the weeds as I might be, obviously doing this for a living and some of you might be. And it was the moderators and, wow, she's a massive turnoff. Those were her takeaways. So just to answer that question on the text line, there you go. That now you've got that answer in case you were wondering. 913-408-7957. Here we go. Let's go to you. Let's go let's start with John. He's in Gardner. What's up, John? You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. Good morning. Going on not a lot of sleep here, but I like her even less than I did, if that's possible. But yeah, she's just very annoying. I thought what was huge for me was that ABC, they tried to play the race card. They tried to bait Trump with the black press corps thing, blah, 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 blah. And Trump was like, okay, she's black. She identifies. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And which I thought was very, very good. And then Kamala, I'm a poor black woman, feel sorry for me, this divisiveness that this spread, blah, 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 blah. And it didn't work. She really tried to overplay it, and I just don't think it landed.
I agree with you, John. I think it's a great point. And is this the John and Gardner I got to meet last night?
Yeah, it was a real pleasure.
Hey,
you are the best.
Thank you very much there, John. It was fun to say hi last night. John was great. We were at Grid Workspaces in Overland Park. So I got to meet some listeners. It's always great to meet callers. Don't always get to meet the callers, the people that you talk to. But John was out there last night, and John's right about that. Now, that was towards the end of the debate, so who knows how many people were tuned in by then. But John is right. I thought the first 20 minutes went pretty darn well for Trump. It was on the economy and abortion. Kamala Harris had no answers on the economy, none whatsoever. And then abortion, Trump played to a draw. And then after that, it started to turn against Donald Trump. But when you look at things like the economy and how Kamala Harris handled that moment, this was the first question to her. And you tell me if you've got anything of substance out of this.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And
Okay. Stop right there. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Most Americans say no, right? That's what the polling suggests. She gets asked the question and goes into this rehearsed answer on, I grew up in a middle-class family. Okay, and that matters. Why? Because your policies have done nothing but destroy the middle class.
I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
Do it now.
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
Stop!
We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
Okay, and why are we in that spot, by the way? There's not crib gouging going on. Let me be very clear. There's not stroller gouging going on right now. Trust me, I've got 3 kids under 6. The reason that young families are struggling is because when it comes to like buying groceries, that's 22% higher than it was 4 years ago. So then it makes it tougher to buy everything else. There is no plan there on the economy. And the fact that you grew up in a middle-class household, no one cares about that because the policies have done nothing but ruin the middle class. So it was not a strong start. I know the media is going to tell you that this was nothing but amazing for Kamala Harris. And yes, did she exceed a very low bar? Sure. She was rehearsed. There's an element to that sounds good, that's appealing, that is obviously different than Donald Trump's style, which is just, beat you over the head with a club, figuratively speaking. But in the end, when you actually listen back, there's nothing there. There's nothing whatsoever that should give anybody an ounce of confidence that she's got the answers to turn this thing around. But then, of course, there's Trump, who did miss some opportunities. And that's my takeaway. We're probably still dead even right now in this race. But had Trump played things on certain parts of the debate night a little bit better, I think he's up a couple of points, 3, 4, 5 points maybe in this deal. 913-4087-957. Mark's in Gardner. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Pete. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm well, sir. What's happening?
I am suffering from TDS, the opposite of derangement syndrome. I'm very Trump disappointment syndrome this morning.
Yeah, that's good. I like what you did there. And here's the thing. I had that feeling last night as well, Mark, where I'm like, oh, he had so many opportunities. There's things that he left on the table. And then I'm like, why am I bothering? We knew how this was going to go. Trump's Trump. It's not going to change. And there's a good part of that, and there's a not so good part of that, and that's just how it is. But I feel you there on that front, Mark.
Well, the thing is I didn't get to watch it. I worked till 9 o'clock last night. Mm-hmm. I came out and I caught it on the radio, and I heard an angry Donald Trump going on, and I thought to myself, when she was talking about Ukraine and sovereign borders, why didn't he just say, what about our sovereign borders?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, they put a bullet in his head, and he comes up with fight, 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 and they wave the crowd size in front of him, and he starts going off like a jilted school kid. He just is. It's just so frustrating.
Listen, Mark, you're right, and the only conclusion I can come to on that is you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I wish you could. And every time one of these debates come up, I'm like, maybe it won't be as hyperbolic. And I'm always disappointed. But the broader point is this. Trump likes to make it more difficult on himself than he needs to. I think he enjoys that maybe. Maybe that's the conclusion to come to. How much will this debate actually impact things come November 5? Not as much as you're going to be told. People are going to make this thing out to be like, oh, man, Kamala's now a serious contender, a serious candidate. I mean, she is. The polling would suggest that right now, you look at the election, it's a 50-50 either way election. And she may have moved the needle in favor of herself a little bit, which might be enough. I mean, don't forget, in 2016 and 2020, some of the key states were decided by 10 to 20,000 votes in places like Georgia and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. We are talking sliver of an election either way in 6 or 7 states. So it does matter from that perspective. It does. But once again, that is going to wear off eventually. And people are going to come back to the question, am I better off today than I was 4 years ago? And I want to play this undecided voter on CNN last night after the debate. CNN had a panel, as many of the shows do, where they talk to undecided voters. And this was when one of them on CNN last night who said this.
What did you see that brought you to a conclusion?
I think it's important to remember that we are voting for the leader of our country and not who we like the most or who we want in our wedding party, but who is actually going to make our country better. And we're in an incredibly unique situation where we've had both of the candidates in office before, and we've gotten to see what they would do. And when facts come to facts, my life was better when Trump was in office. The economy was higher, inflation was lower, things were better overall. And now with Kamala's administration, things haven't been so fantastic. And she's saying she can fix the problems that her administration has caused, but I just don't know if I can afford to take that risk.
That's well said by an undecided voter on CNN last night. I don't know if I can take that risk. And that remains the best thing that Donald Trump has going for him. His 4-year track record versus these 4 years, right? Now, did he do a brilliant job making that case last night? No, because, well, it's Trump. And he likes to step on himself and make it much more difficult than it needs to be. Just what he does. Just who he is. Okay? We've seen it now for 8 years. That's just how he goes about his business. And it's infuriating for those of us who want to see him succeed. And you will have people today who will tell you, no, that's not the case. It went great. Now, here's the thing. A lot of them have skin in the game. But my attitude is always this. It's best in your own household when you and your spouse are calling each other out for your BS, right? Because eventually, if you don't, you're going to end up getting divorced. If you just let the BS slide, if you let the BS just kind of sweep it under the rug, someone's going to eventually blow up. You've got to call each other out. You have to make each other better. That's the sign of a healthy relationship. So when I say, yeah, I'm about to vote for Trump for a third time, no questions asked. But last night could have gone a lot better. I do that from a place of love. I do it from a place of I care about my country and there's too much at stake here to not point out the obvious. I'm not going to sit here, oh, it was perfect. Oh, man, it was great. And boy, the moderators are terrible. Yeah, the moderators were absolutely horrific. Worse than I could have ever imagined. I never thought I'd be longing for the days of CNN moderators. But that's where I found myself last night. I was disgusted with myself because when I was in college, I lived with my grandmother, and we'd watch, well, she liked watching the nightly news. So we'd sit down together and watch the nightly news. And it was always, or I guess World News Tonight, which was David Muir. He had just gotten the job, about 15 years ago, maybe, give or take. And we'd sit down and watch David Muir. And I was so pissed at myself last night for having ever watched David Muir because of how big of a 2-bit hack he was. But it doesn't change the fact that if you're Donald Trump, you had to know this was highly possible. And you had to plan for it. And that's the part where I was watching last night, and I'm like, it doesn't seem like he thought this was possible, and he planned for this. And there were so many ways to handle that part of the show last night, and that's what it was, a show, better than he did. And I criticize, and I say that because I want the guy to win. That's why I say it. Listen, some of the people you see on TV, you hear on national radio, they're getting invited to the cocktail parties, Mar-a-Lago. They're friends with the family and all the kids and all that stuff. And so they've got something to protect for themselves. I don't. I'm just here in Kansas City with you, having a conversation, talking real about what we saw last night and talking about what it means going forward. I'm not protecting anybody or anything. And that's what I think separates us from some of what you might hear in other places. There's nothing to protect personally. It's just a real conversation with real Kansas Cityans and real people about what it means and how it might play out going forward. Trump's still in a great spot to win the election. He just could have done himself more favors last night to give him an even better chance to win the election. 913-408-7957. Smitty is in Olathe. What's up, Smitty? You're on KCMO.
Morning, Pete. That was a rough one last night to watch. I had to go out and have a cup of tea afterwards, you know.
Is that it? I did about 6 tequila shots, so you were missing out, buddy.
I kind of observed what concerns me is the other side of the balloon in the wind here that we're not seeing is, we're inside 60 days, like you mentioned earlier, election, and he's bringing up the immigrants eating dogs and stuff. And I was like, oh, dude, don't do that. And then I figure, well, if they come to Kansas City, won't have any barbecue left anyway. But when you never get a second chance for a first impression, I think that was my biggest concern throughout the whole debate. It's like, dude, just let her have it. Just let her go, like you mentioned earlier. But I hope we can pull some points back later because I left pretty much busted, broken, beat up, and disgusted after the whole thing. So. Have a good one, Pete.
I see what you did there.
You still poor, broke, busted, and disgusted.
Thank you very much there, Smitty. That's true. Trump should have taken the line from Pastor Funderburk. That's what he should have done. 913-408-7957. Kansas City, Sagey is there. Hello, good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call, Pete. I had a couple of questions about the optics that you referred to earlier, and I wanted to share my view as a female, and I want to share my view as a blind female, because listening is really important.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay. What I heard in her voice a couple of times was what I would think kind of a whining, almost tearful, which it would be appropriate. I didn't think it was needed last night. I didn't need to hear the emotions. I needed to hear, what the practicality of our country. What are you going to do? The emotions are going to come later. I wish we could have done more about this abortion. I have my views about that. Now, optically speaking, it was described to me that she was displaying a lot of sneer on her face. Mm-hmm. Now, you can hear a sneer in somebody's tone, and I often wonder when I hear something in someone's tone, is it matching the facial expression? And apparently, what I heard was occurring.
Yes, the optics. You heard correctly. You're right about that. The optics were not good for her. Now, they weren't necessarily great for Trump. I thought he kind of looked a little, tired, a little out of it. But remember, everyone knows Trump. Everyone's got an opinion on Trump. It'd be nice if Trump smiled once in a while, but whatever. Once again, I'm not going to change the guy. He is who he is. It was just the same Donald Trump we've seen for the better part of 8 years. But her, the hand on the chin thing was such a turnoff. She'd look at him when he's talking and have her hand on her chin. And her issue is with guys. She's doing worse with male voters than he's doing with female voters. What guy wants the smug hand on chin look? That look means you're in trouble, right? No guy likes that look. And whoever coached her on that look should be fired. Susan in Kansas City, go ahead.
Hey, Pete. I just want to say that I never expect Trump to do well on these, ever. But what I want to ask people is how in the world they can vote for her when one simple question will answer it. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And I want to tell you, Pete, I went to the grocery store, wanted to buy some cheese, and it was over $7. And I make a good salary, and I can't afford it. Groceries are ridiculous. I am not better off. Our country is not better off. Mm-hmm. It is time to get her gone.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate you. And listen, you're not alone. And Trump mentioned groceries a couple of times. Literally, if I'm Trump, everything I would have said last night would have tied back to the price of groceries. Every little thing. Groceries and Afghanistan. Those two things I would have hit very hard last night. Megyn Kelly and Eric Bolling. Remember Eric? He was on Fox for a long time. He's now got a show on another network. He joined Megyn Kelly, and he tied everything from the last few months to the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's roll.
I'm not sure I can say Trump won either. Maybe Spicer's the closest with it's a draw, but my conclusion is this doesn't move the needle for her.
Can I give you a football analogy? Football season just started. This is a game where Trump was blowing the other team out. It's the Chiefs against whoever, Baltimore last week. They're blowing them out. He's killing them. They switched the quarterback, right? She comes in and throws a couple of touchdown passes. Now, she hasn't been a quarterback. She's just been a backbencher, but she gets lucky, throws some touchdowns, and everyone says, holy cow, Baltimore's going to beat the Chiefs. Not supposed to happen. Until the reality sets in. She doesn't know the playbook. You still have the rest of the game to finish. And here's where we are. We're halfway through the fourth quarter. It's probably tie score. Let's be honest. It's probably a tie score. But you never bet against Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter when you got the ball and it's a tie score. He will come on strong at the end.
He can. It's a good analogy by Eric Bolling. Anyone that's using the Chiefs and their political analogies, I like. I thought only we did that here on KCMO. The difference is Donald Trump has not proven to me yet that he can be Patrick Mahomes in this spot. If last night is a football game, then Donald Trump, as Patrick Mahomes, as the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, finds himself up 3 points and just threw an interception. Now, whether or not that interception ends up getting brought back for a touchdown remains to be seen. Whether or not the other team capitalizes on that interception is not yet clear. But it was an interception. There's no doubt about it. And it was a sloppy interception. It's like one of those deals where if Mahomes sees the high safety and he knows he's throwing in the double coverage. And that was Trump last night. He knew the moderators were going to be against him. Mahomes knows he's throwing in the double coverage, and he does it anyway. That's what happened for Trump. But the optics still, in large part, are not good for her. And Donald Trump is not like sunken by this. It's not, oh, boy, it's over. She's on her way to the White House. No. He's still got a track record going for him. And he's still in a position to win this election. But did he help himself last night? Nah, not really. John in Topeka, what's up, man? Go ahead.
Good morning. Yeah, I was watching that last night, and I was like, oh, my gosh, this is not the Donald Trump that I know. I was waiting for the evisceration to happen, and it seemed like he was angry and bitter. And
I was going to say, but it's really the Trump that we've seen. I mean, it's not the Trump that you know. I mean, it's not the Trump that we want necessarily, but it is the Trump that we know.
Yes, but the thing about it was the optics. It seemed like the camera was up above his head, and it was straight on with her face. I was like, that right there is, I don't know if they did that on purpose to make him look angrier than he is. But and also, I felt like I could out-debated her last night, and that's saying something. I fumble over my words all the time. And the fact is that, he should have gone after the moderators saying, oh, hey, did you give her the questions like you guys did last time? To Hillary, and put them back on their heels, like, hey, put them on the spot, because when they started checking him, that's when he should have shut them down and said, oh, yeah, so you're sitting there checking me, but you're not going to check her. Did you give her the questions like you did last time?
Well, when you look at the questions, and thank you, John, when you look at the questions, I mean, started off economy, went into abortion. Okay, fine, they're going to get their abortion stuff in there. He was playing to a draw then. They do a little immigration. They're fact-checking him. They're never fact-checking her. Things that you might have expected. Like January 6th comes up. And in that moment, Trump did the right thing. He brought up the fact that he did say, be peaceful and patriotic. He did a good job there. But then he keeps going on and on and on. And, he's in defensive mode. And that's the moment where I thought to myself, okay, you rightly bring up the facts of, in my speech, I said, be peaceful and patriotic. And then I spin it into, but, more importantly, David and whatever her name was last night, who was moderating it. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just blanking on her name. What polling shows is the American people care about their kitchen table. They care about their grocery bill. They care about their lives, how they can't buy a home. I know you guys in the media love to obsess over some of these things that make me maybe look bad. But what matters right now to the American people is how they're going to pay their bills. And you guys haven't asked me or asked her about that in 45 minutes. So I think it's important that at this moment in time, we get back to the things the American people care about. Not what you talking heads on ABC care about, not what you biased media clowns care about, but what the American people care about. And that's the economy and the border. And the person on the other side of this stage has destroyed both of those things. And it would be nice if we could get back to talking about the things that the American people care about, that is going to change their lives, not to give you some cute little soundbite that you can play on repeat tomorrow morning on all your little television shows. That's how you spin it back on them. You call out the moderators, you put it back in Kamala Harris's court. But Trump got caught up in a lot of the nonsense. I was doing cartwheels last night when Donald Trump made, I thought was his best point of the debate. The problem is I was also pulling my hair out because I'm sitting here and I'm like, why are we an hour and 40 minutes in and his best and most succinct point is happening in the closing statements? And that's what we got last night from Donald Trump. It was an outstanding point. I just wanted to hear it, an hour and 38 minutes prior.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in.
That was Donald Trump in his closing statement last night. And I'm like, yeah, let's go, baby. That's great. And then my heart kind of sunk and I'm like, it would have been even better at 8:02 versus 9:40. Oh, my goodness. And that's where, as we talked to Bill O'Reilly about last night, Trump got distracted at times. And it's also why Kamala Harris's team wants a second debate. If I'm Donald Trump, I wouldn't do a second debate. Donald Trump needs people to remember how they felt when he was in office about themselves, not how they felt about him. And unless this thing's on Fox, Trump's not going to get a fair shake. I actually believe Fox would do the most nonpartisan debate of any network. The job by ABC was an absolute embarrassment last night. I knew it'd be biased, but it was an absolute embarrassment last night. And I'll get to examples of that coming up here in a couple of minutes. But if I'm Trump, I'm not doing another debate. Because all the complaining about the moderators, I get. But at the same time, you knew it was going to be this way. And Trump seemed wholly unprepared, and he did not handle it well. He didn't. He took Kamala Harris's bait. He took the moderator's bait. And then to complain about it like as if we never saw this coming, we knew it was going to be this way. And either he didn't care enough to want to prepare in the way that he needed to prepare for the moments that we all knew were going to come, or he just can't control himself when he's in these situations. One or the other. I don't know which one it is, or maybe it's a little bit of both.
I don't think he thinks fast on his feet.
That could be it, too. You know? Maybe that's it. I mean, it's weird because he's good at turning a line, right? Like he's very clever with turning a good line.
Well, I see what you're saying.
Kind of like you are on the show. Well, you and Trump have that in common, John.
Yeah, that's all by accident, I guess.
But then when it comes to like, all right, don't take the bait, get back to her issues and her failures and what she hasn't done. But then he's like,
well, he's great at stating the obvious anyway. But those sublime things like Reagan does,
that's
where you can turn where you're. Wait a minute, well, let me turn this way.
Yes.
No, he gets direct. Bull in the China shop, direct response numbers at the rallies, that kind of stuff. Like, no, he should have said, you want to talk about numbers? Let's talk about who's crossing the border.
Yes.
Or you want to talk about numbers? Let's talk about the inflation
number.
Kind of
Here's the number I care about, 21.4.
Those are the kind of things I was hoping for.
Yes.
And was hoping he'd be a little quicker with.
Exactly. Instead, we get a minute on, I had the biggest and the best rallies, and everyone loves my rallies. And yeah, that's true. But like, who cares? No, nobody cares, in his own words.
Nobody cares.
I don't. So that's what we needed to get back to more of last night. And you know who actually had a great night? J.D. Vance. Now, J.D. Vance wasn't on the stage, but J.D. Vance was making the rounds in cable news last night after the debate. And take a listen to how J.D. Vance perfectly deflects on this ridiculous John Karl question, another ABC lackey who is completely in the tank for Kamala Harris. But listen to J.D. Vance and how he beautifully handles this.
Just very quickly, I heard Donald Trump before this debate describe Kamala Harris as, I'll just read a few of them, a low IQ individual, somebody who doesn't have the mental capacity to be president, really dumb, unable to put two sentences together. Is that what you saw on the stage tonight?
John, what I saw was a lot of slogans. I think the American people are smart, and Kamala Harris talks to them like they're children. She repeats these ridiculous platitudes where if you actually think about what she said, you realize that it doesn't make any sense. She talks a lot about her plans, but then her plans, when you analyze the substance, don't make any sense. And more importantly, John, the American people don't get fed on plans. She has been the vice president for 3.5 years. What she can't do, refuses to do, and has no ability to do is to say, I accomplished lower prices because she didn't, or I accomplished lower housing prices because she didn't, or I secured the southern border because she didn't do that. She has failed as vice president, and the fundamental question is, do we want to give her a promotion? I think the answer has to be no, John.
That is J.D. Vance brilliantly stating that point. Now, he's going to be debating Tim Walz on October 1st. And by the way, that is... I know VP debates don't usually move the needle, but I am very much looking forward to that because I think J.D. Vance, even though I think it's on CBS, it's going to be biased towards Walz. We all know that. I think J.D. Vance, from what I've seen of him, is going to handle it brilliantly. And if I'm Trump, I'm not doing another debate. I'm just not. Chris in Prairie Village, what's up, my man? How are you?
Yeah, just to make a couple of comments about the debate. I briefly heard some of your commentary from about 5 minutes ago. I just point out, I thought I've listened to you, Pete, and you requested a perfectly disciplined debate from Donald Trump. And to be quite honest, I think you got it. He didn't make eye contact with Kamala one time for the whole debate. She sat there staring at him, guffawing, making out, strange mannerisms with her face while she repeated her canned lines, regardless if they were non sequitous with the question or not. She was, you notice the camera angle. She was actually, the top of her head was actually positioned higher than the top of Trump's head throughout the whole debate to make her look bigger because she is, in fact, so small. But I thought, most importantly, Trump gave the disciplined debate that guys like you have requested of him, and I thought he did very well.
I'm speechless. You thought that was a perfectly disciplined debate from Donald Trump.
Did you notice at the front when she charged across the stage to shake his hand and said, "Oh, I'm Kamala Harris"? I mean, it was just embarrassing. He walked slowly on the stage. He shook her hand. He really didn't acknowledge her existence. He didn't even make eye contact with her one time. He focused on the moderator. He stayed true to the clock, and he gave you Donald Trump's version of a disciplined debate. And I'm frankly astonished that you think it wasn't and don't see that.
It was far from disciplined. I mean, he took the bait when
I'm just going to disagree with you. I think a lot of people are going to disagree with you on that.
That's fine. I just don't know, what you thought was disciplined when he took the bait on rallies, when he took the bait on 2020 election, when he took the bait on January 6th. I mean, he took the bait on all the things that she allowed to get under his skin.
Right. He defends his positions. He should brag about his rallies. She can't get three people in a building together.
You're missing the point. It's not about that, though.
What do you want him to say? Why don't you run for it and you prove show us how it's done?
Come on, man. I'm trying to have a debate with you, and now you're turning it on. Well, why don't you run for president? I mean, come on, what kind of conversation is this, Chris? Come on, man.
Donald Trump has done, if you remember the 2016 debates.
Yeah.
The way they were very raucous and more traditional in terms of live audience and interaction between the candidates. And Trump knocked out 16 Republican adversaries and ultimately did three-hour debates with Hillary Clinton and won the election. I will say that the Chris Wallace debate versus Donald Trump, where literally Chris Wallace almost jumped on stage and pulled Donald Trump's pants down for him. I mean, he was literally fighting two guys on the stage simultaneously, and that was by design. You saw him today. If you compare the performance last night with the performance to him versus Biden and Chris Wallace, it's exactly what you've been requesting from him. And I even thought it while I was watching the debate. I was like, well, this is what guys like Pete want to see, is him being disciplined, looking at the moderator, not acknowledging his opponent, not taking the bait, being disciplined. He's going to say, if you just don't like what he says, then you just don't like him. But he did say some great things about what he's going to do for the economy, and these people just repeat things like, there were very fine people. I mean, can you believe how?
What is the great? Give me the great thing that he said on the economy. I'm just curious. Like, what's the great thing?
Well, I mean, we all know that Donald Trump knows more about taxation, tariffs. Oh, the points he was making about tariffs and how and she didn't even deny any of this stuff. She didn't even shake his head when he was. He's like, the tariffs brought in so much money that the Democrats left them in place because they can't afford not to have them. And she just stood there and stared at him and didn't even deny it. I mean, that was one thing, pouring money into the Treasury, regardless of what you think about strategic tariffs or free trade, whatever. She didn't even have a comment. And then when he was talking about, I thought his answers on abortion were absolutely perfect.
I thought he handled abortion very well, Chris. I thought he handled it very well. I agree with that.
And when listen to this, Pete, when he said, this was the most shocking moment, and I'm not, that's not my issue. But when he said they want to take the baby out of the womb after it's born or in the very last minutes, she didn't even deny it. He said some kind of shocking, gross things about that, and she just didn't even shake her head. I mean, like, no, we wouldn't do that. I mean, I was in disbelief. But my point was this, Pete. I thought about your show last night while I'm watching the debate, and I said to myself, this is what Pete wants. He wants a disciplined performance, a boring, disciplined performance by Donald Trump to speak to people in the center of the country, and that's what you got. And you're still not happy with it.
No, because he didn't do that. Because you watched a different debate, Chris. Thank you. I gave you a lot of time. I appreciate the call, but you didn't watch the same debate I did. Sorry. I mean, I gave you a lot of time. I appreciate the call. We agree to disagree. You did not watch the debate I watched. You didn't. 913-408-7957. It's not that it was awful. It just could have been a lot better. That's it. I know a lot of you want to get in. Mark's in Independence. He's been waiting patiently. What's up, Mark? You're on KCMO.
Hey, Mondo. I enjoy your show, and thank you for having Bill O'Reilly on. I certainly miss him. He's better than Gutfeld. That's another topic. Very quickly, I agree with you. He missed some opportunities. I also agree with your coworker there. He's not always quick on his feet. I mean, for instance, when they brought up climate, he could have led into, hey, we can't even address climate. Look at the debt and interest, and it's taking resources away, not to mention inflation is a tax on the American people that may be uncontrollable if we let it get out of hand. Also, she said Ukraine deserves territorial integrity and sovereignty, and I would have zapped her with, yes, I agree on that, and so do we. Where were you, borders are? And finally, 8 states do have unlimited abortions. That's a fact. I don't know why he doesn't know that. And by the way, her turnover on her staff is over 90%. They all said they couldn't stand working for her. He should have brought that up. I just sometimes I sit and I watch him on TV and I go, Trump, come on. All you have to do, you and your staff, is to pick the top 2 or 3 major topics, look up some statistics on each one of them, just 2, and their sources.
Listen, Mark, I don't think he does his homework. Like, Trump was he was a great president. I mean, he did a very good job in 4 years in the White House on the policy. It's indisputable. I think history will prove that correct. Incredible job. I'm about to vote for him for a 3rd time, and I'm going to run to go do it. But I think on these debates, especially in the general election, I don't know how else to put it. I just think he's lazy. He doesn't do the homework. I always think it's going to be a little bit different and a little bit better, and it never is.
I agree with you. That's why I brought it up. All they have to do is pick 2 or 3 of the top subjects, look up a couple of statistics on it, know the sources. And by the way, good preparation, because I have debated. And I'm telling you, good preparation, it doesn't matter. All the narrators could be biased as hell. And if you know what you're talking about, you can overcome that with the confidence of the fact that you know the facts and you're citing them. And that's all you have to do is rely on the facts and prepare. And preparation is not hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. You know, Trump was a master in the primary debates in 2016. In part because there were, 10 to 15 people on the stage, and it became this kind of personality litmus test, and nobody had ever seen anyone like Donald Trump before. And he's ripping Jeb Bush, and we're all loving it. Little Marco, it was brilliant. But then when you get to the general election, that's where, the policy chops matter a little more. And Trump's never been the policy wonk. He's always more of the big picture guy. And he doesn't have to be a policy wonk. I've never asked him to be a policy wonk. It's just not who he is. You got to be who you are. I'm not trying to change him. I'm saying, can you hone in the Trump that we all like and appreciate and the talents that he has in the debate stage as a longtime TV guy, and just make sure you do your best job to not take the bait on January 6th, 2020 election, and just keep getting back to, listen, what happened 4 years ago doesn't matter to where the American people are at now. Hey, David Muir, their grocery prices are up 22%. I know you guys in the Beltway care about all these things from years ago. The American people are hurting. I ran again to fix this country. I did it once after Barack Obama. I will do it again after Joe Biden and my opponent here, Kamala Harris, who has been along for the ride for the last 3.5 years. And that's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm here to talk about. You guys can do all your swampy stuff. I'm here on behalf of the American people, and I will talk about the issues that they care about, not the issues that you care about. Instead, he's like, my rallies are huge. It's like, no. That's no. Kayla's in Kansas City. Hi, Kayla. You're on KCMO.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, Kayla. What's going on?
I missed the last caller, but I was in my car and I heard you talking to the Chris guy, and I just wanted to call because I completely disagree and agree with you. Donald Trump was not disciplined enough last night, and I really wish we could turn back time. But what I wish that they would have talked about are like the things you mentioned. I wish that he would have thrown those numbers out there of the immigrants illegally crossing the border. I wish he would have talked about the inflation. I also, and I don't know if others would agree with me, but I do wish he would have maybe called out Kamala a little more on her stance on minors getting the gender affirming care and things like that, because I feel like that is something that was completely ignored, and that to me is a huge reason why I would never vote for Kamala. It's disgusting that we're mutilating our children and taking those rights from our parents. I wanted to hear a lot more about that.
Yeah.
Which we heard nothing of. I also wanted to hear a little more about Trump's stance, and I don't know if I'm not a big fact checker. I don't know if what I've read is correct, but I've read that he has a pretty a good plan for parents who are trying to have babies and cannot and are having a really hard time with that. I think that if we're going to put our dollars or our resources toward anything to help our society, our citizens, it should not be to kill their babies. It should be to help them create family. And I've heard that he has a plan for that. So I don't know if what I'm reading is not direct or correct, but I was hoping to hear something about that, which I didn't. Yeah. And one more thing, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm 33 years old. I think I'm maybe one of those who would be considered a young voter or a young listener, and I'm sure there's younger, of course, in their 20s. But knowing the people in my age bracket, the people in my demographic, it's really unfortunate to admit that Kamala did a disgustingly good job at saying everything that someone my age would want to hear, even though it's not. I'm not falling for it.
Yeah.
But
well,
I know what people might.
Yeah, you and I are
and
the
that's why I
same.
don't have a lot of friends.
I'm 36, so we're in the same age range. And you're absolutely right about that, Kayla. So thank you. We appreciate you being here on KCMO. And you're right. I would love to have heard more of what you're talking about. But Trump didn't lose the election last night. Like, he had a bad debate night, but he didn't lose the election. He just didn't help himself.